Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from End entitled The Sin of Human Frailty. But first, just one more itsy bitsy teensy weensy little reminder that we are hosting our very special Halloween party today, Sunday, October 29th, right here on this channel on the Metal Meltdown. The party starts at approximately 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're gonna drink, play video games, be generally quite stupid and goofy and over the top. This is consistently the biggest party we throw on the Metal Meltdown every year without fail, and I cannot picture this year being an exception to the rule whatsoever. That is, of course, unless you aren't there. You have to be there. It's not a party without you, bud. Don't worry if you don't have a Halloween costume. It's fine. Neither does Chompy. Be there or be square, bro. Plain and simple. And I'd rather be there than square. Just saying. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, let's officially start talking about The Sin of Human Frailty. This is the sophomore studio album from End, metalcore, hardcore, extreme metal supergroup comprised of perhaps some of the most talented and well-known figures within the metalcore, hardcore, and extreme metal realms out there today. On lead vocals, we have Brendan Murphy from Counterparts. On bass, we have Jay Pepito from Reign Supreme. On drums, we have Matt Guglielmo from the Acacia Strain. And handling guitar duties, we have Gregory Thomas from Shai Hulud and Will Putney from For An Autopsy, the latter of whom is also a producer on this record. It goes without saying that these are all insanely talented and hardworking people, but as we know from experience talking about supergroups and listening to music from supergroups, sometimes, just because you put awesome people in one room, that doesn't mean you're always gonna get something truly awesome. I mean, sure, sometimes you get something really legitimately awesome, like Mutoid Man or Them Crooked Vultures, but other times you get something like Chickenfoot or Prophets of Rage. And I'm not gonna lie, as talented as Matt is on drums, I was a little upset when I heard that Billy Reimer, formerly of the Dillinger Escape Plan, was in the band and had left the band, performing only on their 2020 debut, Splinters from an Ever-Changing Face, which itself, while totally gnarly and brutal, did have some glaring issues. For one, it was so chaotic and so brutal and so over the top that it was almost kind of garish and ugly in some parts. There was a lot of stuff that was buried and a lot of stuff that was muddled, and it was at times overstimulating. And I should note right off the bat that this particular problem is not 110% relieved or removed or dealt with on The Sin of Human Frailty. It's pretty easy for me to set that aside and not hyperfixate on that, though, because ultimately, The Sin of Human Frailty still succeeds by being an incredibly versatile and punishing record from start to finish. It is just as much an incredibly abrasive, cutthroat, and bloodthirsty album as it is an incredibly intelligent, introspective, and flexible album. It's blending some of the heaviest tones and some of the darkest shades and some of the most brutal riffs and ideas of like metallic hardcore and like classic American metalcore and like grindcore with influences from across the extreme metal spectrum and quite a few special guests that in turn kind of bring their own unique ideas to the table. Yes, it's an incredibly noisy, chaotic ride, but goddamn, it is a fucking entertaining and enthralling one from start to finish. The opening number, A Predator Yourself, very appropriately strikes like a predator in the night, going straight for the jugular with incredibly sharp, fierce, dark, crazed, metallic hardcore and grind madness. Tons of wild, sick, twisted, rabid riffs and grooves, mad barking vocals. Once those slower, stomping kind of classic hardcore grooves start popping up near the end of the track with that static and feedback and those like roaring vocals, I mean, it's just so fucking hype. It just goes so fucking hard. I hear this and suddenly I feel like I'm in a dark, sweaty fucking basement surrounded by a bunch of fucking psychos drinking their fucking guts out. Following that, you have Gaping Wounds of Earth, which contrasts these surprisingly spacious beatdowns, almost as if there's a gaping wound in between all of these, like, percussive blasts, with full-on, like, extreme metal fury. Some tremolo riffage can be heard here and there throughout, kind of giving this a little bit of a blackened underbelly and shade. There's also some more technical metalcore riffage, and of course, layers of screamed, agonizing vocals. The whole thing honestly kind of feels like Full of Hell trying their hands at a more standard kind of metalcore cut. Speaking of Full of Hell, Dylan Walker of Full of Hell fame rears his head on Worthless is the Lamb. Between Brendan's barking vocals and his just absolutely disgusting sneering gutturals and the more intense power violence and super dark grindcore music, I mean, it's an absolute powerhouse of a cut. I really love that kind of sludge metal-esque breakdown near the end as well, and how this thing closes on a really claustrophobic ambient note. He ain't the only guest star, though. J.R. Hayes of Pig Destroyer fame shows up on Twice Devoured Kill, which is just filled with these manic, twirling whirlwinds of guitars and these incredibly jagged beats. Its end basically doing, really brutal mathcore for a hot minute. One more guest star, namely Debbie Gow of Harriet, pops up on Thaw, which just so happens to be one of my favorite cuts on the record, which kind of takes us on a bit of a detour into some really dark, underground, noise rock, industrial metal territory, with some really aggressive machine gun riffage and some electronic percussion that honestly would not have been out of place on a really old Ministry record or something really heavy and dark and fucked up from Nine Inch Nails. There's also some really cool drum fills and some really cool glitchy sequences, contrasted with some more menacing, hardcore bursts and explosions that feels within the realms of, underneath era Code Orange. Debbie's vocals on here are amazing. She sounds intense, she sounds wild, she sounds unhinged. And I am fucking loving these lyrics too. Super fucked up, super provocative, super poetic as well. Writing, only hurt could thaw a liar's frozen tongue. Sue shut the lips of prophets speaking sermons in deceit, unanointed and immune to the venom the secrete. Definitely my favorite cut on the record. It's just such an unpredictable and savage little banger. It is probably followed by Hollow Urn, which I do think is the most expansive thing that End has made thus far. It has these swelling synths and these towering walls of static, a lot of ambient stuff, a lot of industrial stuff, a lot of post-metal stuff. Eventually it kind of blossoms into something really heavy and oppressive. The whole thing kind of feels like Author and Punisher trying their hands at something more cinematic and progressive. This whole thing wraps up in 30 minutes too, which I think is for the best. I know I just gave Mirker shit for writing a really short record, but when you're dealing with hardcore and metalcore and thrash metal and anything with this much energy and brutality, I think generally it's better to just kind of get in and get the fuck out. Which is exactly what End do, and thank God for it. Had this gone on for maybe 45 or 50 minutes or so, this probably would have gotten to be somewhat egregious and tiring. Again, I do think that there's a lot that is kind of buried in noise and static and feedback. There is still some work to be done in the production side of things, but all things considered, I've really enjoyed this record. I would happily jam it again. I wouldn't object to picking it up on vinyl. I'm feeling a 4 out of 5 on this bad boy, and honestly, I would say that out of everything I've heard within the metalcore realms this year, this is my favorite thing. Granted, it's debatable if this even is metalcore, but it's not quite full-blown grindcore. It's definitely not full-blown black metal or industrial metal, even if it does pull influences from that genre. So fuck it, until someone comes up with a better name for this, I'm going with metalcore. I feel like metalcore in 2023 has been really stale, and there's been a lot of stuff that just kind of sounds the same, and the stuff that doesn't sound the same, it's bands like Avenged Sevenfold and Sleep Token that are trying way too hard to be really experimental. And here's End, who are kind of sitting comfortably in the middle, writing super vicious music, but still also throwing in tons of weird shit, and doing so without being fucking pretentious and weird. It's fucking great, man. I got nothing more to say. 4 out of 5. Definitely check this bad boy out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown immediately. Check us out on Discord. Pick up some merch on Redbubble. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.